Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are having a great day so far. So in this video, we will proceed with our disassembly series by removing this board, flipping it over, and also removing the shield on the other side of this board to take a closer look at some of the internal components which are responsible for a couple of different features on this board. I am not going to go through every single component and all of its features. However, I think I will review 3 of the most notable components on this board and their responsibilities, which are going to be the CPU, or the Central Processing Unit, the PPU, or the Picture Processing Unit, and the notorious NES lockout chip. That's CIC. Okay. So moving along, to remove this board, we can see that we have a screw in the top left corner of this RF module. In the top right corner of the console, in the top left corner, there's a screw here. And in the bottom right corner, just below this electrolytic capacitor, we have a screw. Might be a little bit difficult to see, but it is down there as well. So to proceed with the disassembly, we will take our screwdriver. Ideally, you would like to use a magnetic screwdriver for this purpose, especially here, because it is very easy for these screws to fall down into the housing itself. Yeah, that is one. And that one is also loosened. Let us go ahead and proceed by gently from this metal piece, moving the console back and forth. I need to loosen this a little bit more. Okay. And after doing so, we can gently lift this board up, taking very particular care not to lift anything that should not be ripped from the board. And you should excuse me as I forgot something very important. The controller ports and the switches for the power and the reset are still connected to this board through these cables. So from the front, they connect utilizing these connectors. And now that we have the board elevated, we should remove these connectors, ideally from their connector housing. We do not want to be pulling on the cables. Otherwise, that could create bad connections later. So let's remove those. And now that those have been removed, let's go ahead and move this board to the side for now. Here we have some more metal shielding, which is also held into the chassis by these 2 screws at the top. So let's go ahead and remove those. Should definitely be using a better screwdriver for this purpose. However, this is what I currently have on hand, and it should serve its purpose. These are pretty tight. And once again, these are screwed into plastic posts, so when you are reassembling the console, you should be conscious about the screw bosses as well as over tightening. So now we have this aluminum shield, which is similar to the shield, which we have removed previously, possibly utilized to reduce radio frequency interference when the console is being played, which can cause distortion in the image and other fun little things while you are enjoying your console. And now we have a look on the interior of the bottom case of the Nintendo Entertainment System console, as well as a little bit of a closer look at the power and reset buttons and the controller ports as well. Both controller ports using a similar connector. And the power buttons utilizing this connector, which is connected to a board that is soldered beneath these switches. Just realizing now that I've said that, there probably isn't much more to go through regarding these. It's pretty simple technology. So I think in the next video, and I never edit these videos, but I think in the next video I will probably just go through the reassembly process. Yeah, probably isn't anything interesting on this side of the board. So yeah, okay, let's go ahead and move that to the side, and let's take a closer look at this board here. So on this board, we can see a variety of ceramic capacitors, a couple of electrolytics, a couple of chips here, which are, okay, I do not want to forget that. A couple of chips here, which are responsible for different purposes. We see resistors, we see some kind of variable resistor or potentiometer or something there. All of these traces look clean. If we were suspecting some kind of problem, we could take a digital multimeter and do some fault testing, some fault finding, and determine where the faulty components are, since all of these components, through usage after years and years of use, even if they are taken well care of and well maintained, all of them will eventually fail at a certain point. It may be a very long time from now, but they are within certain parameters of design. If we are to remove the cartridge connector here, we can see that, as I've described before, this connector looks very similar to the connector on a game cartridge. And I could probably disassemble a game cartridge to take a closer look at this if anyone is interested in such a thing. As we can see here from the side profile, they are similar in size. And we have a closer look here at the connector itself, in which it has this sort of diagonal pointing direction in which it takes the cartridge, and then when you press it down, it presses down on these pins, which causes the board to make a good connection. It's a pretty simple design, just pins going into the interior. They come here through the back. There are no breaks. And then they come out this side, which connects directly to the board. Like so. So to go over some information regarding this console. If we, yeah, this is upside down. Let's turn it where we can actually read the numbers on the chips here. So here we have our 2A03 chip, which is going to be our central processing unit. This chip is initially designed by Ricoh. They produced an NMOS processor based on the 6502, which is called the 2-alpha-03 or 2A03. This chip differed from a standard 6502 in that it had the ability to handle sound, serving as a pseudo audio processing unit, so a PPU, as well as a CPU. It also lacked a binary coded decimal mode, which allowed representing each digit using 4 bits. So the CPU accesses memory using buses. The memory is divided into 3 parts: the ROM inside the cartridges, the CPU's RAM, and the input-output registers. The address bus is used to set the address of the required location, the control bus being used to inform the components whether the request is a read or a write, and the data bus being utilized to read or write the bytes to that selected address. So it's pretty interesting. This chip had a 16-bit address bus and as such could support 64 kilobytes of memory. So it is, by today's standards, very primitive technology. If you would like to know more information about this chip regarding the registers, program counter, stack pointer information, there is quite a lot of interesting information on the documentation that I was able to utilize for this video. If you would like to know more, then I will provide a link in the description and you could find out more about this chip as well as the other 2 chips that I am going to be reviewing here today. The next chip that we will give a brief overview of is going to be our picture processing unit, which is going to be closer to the cartridge connector. This 2Charlie02 or 2C02 chip. Ricoh also designed and supplied the 2Charlie02 to serve as the picture processing unit. And there are some special registers used for screen scrolling. However, the PPU's registers are mostly located in the I/O registers section of the CPU memory. The PPU also has its own memory, known as VRAM, or video RAM. And similar to the CPU, the PPU can also address 64 kilobytes of memory, although it only has 16 kilobytes of physical RAM. So, reading from and writing to PPU memory can be done by using the I/O registers that are going to be listed in the documentation that I provide in the description to this video. Something interesting about the PPU is that it also has a separate 256 byte area of memory, SPR RAM, which is sprite RAM, to store the sprite attributes. The sprites themselves can be found in the pattern tables, which are going to be in the documentation that I provide as well. There's also more information regarding PPU registers, the direct memory access information, the color palette, pattern tables, and much, much more. So now we will go ahead and begin speaking about the CIC, also known as the CIC, the checking integrated circuit. And that pane of a chip is located here. It is a lockout chip, which is designed by Nintendo for this NES video game console. And the chip is part of a system known as 10 NES, so 10 November Echo Sierra. in which a key, which is stored in the game cartridge, is used by the lock, which is this chip stored in the console, to both check if the game is authentic and if the game is the same region as the console. The chip was designed in response to the North American video game crash of 1983. It was partially the result of a lack of both publishing and quality control. The idea was that by forcing third-party developers to have their games go through an approval process, Nintendo could stop such titles like shovelware from entering the market. So there have been improved designs of the CIC chip, which were also used in the later Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the Nintendo 64, although running an updated security program in which it would perform additional types of checks. Needless to say, the lockout chip was controversial, with several developers opting to release their games without Nintendo's approval, most notably Tengen, which was a subsidiary of Atari, which basically copied the CIC chip, resulting in their games running without issue. And of course, in response, Nintendo sued Atari for copyright infringement. So, something else that's interesting about this